Hello, it's Scott Manley here, and I have just spent $30,000 on a spaceship. Not a real world spaceship, a spaceship in a video game. And many of you guys are probably saying something along the lines of Whiskey Fat Tango Foxtrot, right? Well, look, okay, it's not real money, but it is kind of real money in a very convoluted kind of way. And it is $30,000 plus, but it's not money that I could ever get access to on my own. So yeah, the game is EVE Online, a infamous, massively multiplayer online game. If you look, there's some amazing stories of this, stories of treachery, of war, diplomacy, tens of thousands of players fighting in a galaxy with massive spaceships and planets and nebula and asteroid belts and a real world an economy which is so cool it like matches the real world. It's an amazing, fascinating thing to look at, even if you're not a player. If you're a player, it really becomes, it's a question of whether you want to play internet spaceships or spreadsheets in space. A lot of people find that if they want to win the game, they really have to play the spreadsheets version. So yeah, this game, it was launched in 2003 and I started playing in 2007, and I kind of stopped playing probably 3 or 4 years ago. I stopped playing or retired, or as other people say, I won the game because I finally weaned myself off the addiction. But not before I made bank in that game. I sat around with, millions of PLEX. Now, PLEX is an item which was their solution to allow players to buy in-game assets with real money. It's kind of complicated. What they did was that you could buy game time for the game because it was a subscription game. You had to pay $20 a month to get 30 days, to get game time. But you could buy 30 days of game time and then convert it to in-game items and then sell those so you could get real money, and the players that bought those could then turn it into game time. So players that had a lot of in-game money could play the game for free. Players with a lot of real-world money could fund those other players and buy their big spaceships so they could then get blown up later. Because that's typically what happened to people that paid their way into big spaceships in EVE. So yeah, I ended up with millions of those, and the problem is, while there's a way to turn real world money into those, there's no way to turn those into real world money. And while you could hypothetically do out of game transactions with PayPal and eBay, the games makers are very much opposed to that, and they ban accounts and they make it very clear that they do not want this happening. So there's two ways that I have been able to convert this into real world money. First of all, on the 10th anniversary, they released this nice fat box set with books and memorabilia, in-game items, and this really cool spaceship model. This is a model of the Rifter. This is one of the smallest, most popular spaceships in the game. It's a Minmatar, which is one of the factions' frigate. And it's kind of cool, it's iconic, it's awesome, and by the way, it's also a USB hub. I've never used it as a USB hub, but I do like it as a sort of model. The other way that you can convert your in-game items into real money is every now and then they would do these charity drives where they get people to buy PLEX, pilots time from the market, and then donate it, and then the developers of the game convert that into real world money, which they donate to a good cause. And a couple of weeks ago, they began another one of these, the PLEX for Good drive, raising money for the Australian wildfire charities. And a lot of people all across the game got together to start to secure these PLEX so they could donate them and have CCP turn them into real money. And one of the players, called Keelon Darklight, who was a good player at the game, he was actually a good spaceship pilot. I'm a good spreadsheet pilot. He put up a very rare ship for auction. So it was called the Gold Magnate. And I remember when I just started the game back in 2007, I was reading about all these spaceships that were in the game, and they talked about the Gold Magnate, which is a special version of the Magnate. The Magnate's just like a small spaceship about the same size as that. Some people compare it, it looks similar to Slave 1, but it's a bit bigger. The gold version, only one of those had existed in 2007. It had been given out in 2003 to a pilot that had won some trials competition, and he then sold it to somebody else who then lost it in a fight. And, when something's destroyed in Eve, it's gone for good. And that's one of the reasons why it's become such a good platform for giant wars. You can't fight a war in something like Star Wars Battlefront because everything just keeps respawning. No, you have to have real loss. And that does mean that there were no more gold magnates in the game. So when they redid the Amerian Trials back in 2016, Kalon's team won. And all the 4 players that were part of that team, they all got them. And of course, they were all hardcore PvP pilots. So yeah, 2 of those have been destroyed and there's only 2 left in the game, making them the rarest of all internet spaceships. So one of these was put up for sale by its owner, Kalon Darklight. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if I just, throw a bunch of PLEX at it? The whole point was that he was going to then turn around and take the profits from that and donate it. So I felt this was a good way for me to not only donate to this cause with my massive in-game assets, but also to buy quite possibly the most expensive internet spaceship ever sold on the public market. And that is why you're seeing the occasional story suggesting that I've spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on an internet spaceship. And what will I do with it? Well, right now it's sitting in a station in low security space and I'm not going to touch it because everybody knows that I now have the most expensive spaceship in the game. And it's also actually, it's not like big and powerful, it's just rare. Like this thing can be blown up by, breathing at it the wrong way. I'm sure it's pretty good, but point is, I'm not going to take this out because it's very likely to get blown up. I'm going to wait maybe, I'm going to create a bunch of alts and I'm going to figure a way to get out of low security space to somewhere safer. And I will probably be freaking out as I do that because it's a lot of money. So yeah, EVE Online is really a fascinating game. I've never quite gotten away from it. I still follow it, still keep track of all the battles. You see that I've made a few different videos on it. In fact, EVE Online was kind of the game that got my YouTube channel started. Early on, I was just like, oh, let's post videos from my iPhone, and they were kind of crap and useless. But then I was playing EVE and I saw people in the forums complaining that this game is way too complicated. You have to have a PhD in physics to understand all this stuff. And so I began to make videos showing my 4-year-old daughter playing the game and mocking these people. And these got quite a few views. We had some giggles, we had some laughs. And then I made a fairly serious video explaining how to get started in the game, and it's mostly still valid. The 10 things you should know about starting up with EVE Online. Like, by the way, you can't save your stuff. If it's destroyed in the game, it doesn't come back. A lot of people assume that it's like other MMOs. And I think actually because it's not like other MMOs, that's one of the reasons why the game continues to be popular, even almost 17 years after its release in 2003. The thing about EVE is that it's really a big sandbox with spaceships. You can create a lot of the content yourself by the different alliances fighting over control of space. And that's where the real fun happens, the big fights for control over the materials and minerals that drive the galaxy. But beyond that, there's not a huge number of rules. They're not really going out of their way to create lots of stories and content inside the game like you would find with, say, World of Warcraft. Once you've done all the various runs and killed all the bosses in World of Warcraft, well, what are you going to do? You're going to do it again and hope you get that rare drop. In EVE Online, yeah, you're doing it all the time because there's only like a handful of these missions. But the big fights between alliances, that's pretty darn amazing. And the fact that it has a real economy where it has been studied by real economists, and I found that most fascinating. And indeed, that real economy is how I managed to make a lot of my money in the game. For example, I was sort of associated with a group called Goonswarm, who at one point decided to manipulate the market for specific fuel products that were derived from something called blue ice. And they funded a lot of people to kill anyone mining blue ice in the game. And of course, before this happened, everybody built up huge, behind the scenes, built up huge stocks of the blue ice and their byproducts. And then when the supply was cut off, we all sold it into the market and we made a massive amount of money. And yeah, also, for example, when a certain spaceship came along and it needed minerals which weren't widely available or were running out, I was able to supply that requirement by essentially melting down the holy books of one of the factions. So yeah, sorry about that, but the market needed those minerals. So yeah, I'm not sure what else to say, but EVE Online is definitely an interesting thing, and I don't advise anybody just randomly downloads and plays the game, because it's something that appeals to a very, very niche kind of person. The person that likes to craft strategies and is a person that isn't a solo player. You cannot play EVE as a single player. But yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to sort of set the record straight and say, yes, I did. I did actually spend $30,000 to $40,000, depending upon how you calculate it, on a spaceship in a video game that I'm probably never going to fly. I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.